Hey, Raider Nation, welcome back. It is time for another Silver and Black today, an Odyssey original podcast covering your Las Vegas Raiders. Hi, everybody. Scott Branson along with Mo Moten, my broadcast partner. Mo is the senior NFL writer over at Bleacher Report, covering the entire NFL. You can also catch his work specifically on the Raiders at sportsnaut.com. Follow him on Twitter at MOEMOTON. That's Mo Moten. Also, you can follow me, LV Gully, on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. I guess we should start calling it the X. I don't know. Some people might be talking about their ex-wife or ex-boyfriend when they say the X, so I don't know. But anyway, you can follow us there as well as the show. SNB Today is that handle. Also, make sure you download the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your audio. Turn on the auto download for us. That helps us significantly. We appreciate that. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit subscription and the notifications bell. And wherever else you might be watching. The video is now distributed YouTube. It gets up on Twitter for our live shows. It's on Rumble. It's on Twitch. Wherever you get your video, you can find Silver and Black today. So thanks for being with us again on this Tuesday. All right, Mo, here we are. We're on a Tuesday. We're starting to see transactions come down the line, but I want to go and visit back to the Raiders games. You talked about on the Silver and Black Blitz yesterday, by the way. As you guys know, not only do you get our full-length shows, but Mo and I drop some other content, usually between 10 and 20 minutes, on thoughts that we have, and Mo had some yesterday on the roster, which were great. But Mo, let's go back one last time. I want to just sum up some of the things from the Rams game. You and I always go back and watch the games multiple times after we watch and react to them live, as we did in our post-game show with Murph. But when you look at the game against the Rams and you've watched it again, tell me again, we'll talk about Aidan O'Connell in a second because that's obviously the story for the Raiders. But what else jumped off the screen at you when you revisited that matchup between the Rams and the Raiders?
One name that stuck in my mind, Drake Thomas, the undrafted rookie linebacker. I think I wouldn't call him a lock. I didn't mention him as a lock on my Silver and Black Blitz episode to make the roster, but I think he's the guy to circle that could be another undrafted linebacker who makes the 50-man depth chart like Darian Butler did and Luke Masterson did last year. So he's not making the splash plays, no interceptions and sacks, but he's really already made for the run defense already. His run fits are great right now. We'll see what he can do if he's tested more in the passing game. Not many opportunities to show what he can do there, but right now he's doing what he's supposed to do, and I think he's one of the Raiders' top run defenders in the preseason. So if you're looking at an undrafted rookie who can make it this year, as undrafted rookies do every year, Drake Thomas is the guy.
There you go. So, yeah. And, his play, surprising. And again, I know you and Murph both on the post-game show disagreed with me a little bit about the linebacking play. And again, I don't think the linebackers are playing poorly. I just think that when you look at linebacker cores in the NFL, even with what you've seen and some of the good performances from this unit, it's still not up to snuff as far as a team where they need to be. Now, you play with what you got. Unless somebody comes open and this team makes a roster move, goes out and gets somebody who's cut somewhere else or finds a free agent that has been unsigned, then I get that. You upgrade when you can. But the reality is, Mo, as I've said, you play with the hand you have. And when you talk about Drake Thomas, obviously played really well. A couple guys that stuck out to me, Mo, I had some offensive guys I want to talk about. I don't know why I focused on that area, so it's good that you brought up a defensive player. But I thought, again, it's a crowded wide receiver room in Las Vegas. There's no question about it. But DeAndre Carter, I think, especially in the kicking game, okay, you look at what he was able to do, kickoff returns. He had the punt return he almost broke. Had he not stepped out of bounds, it would have been all the way to the house. But DeAndre Carter, I think, is making a play for it's going to be tough. You talk about tough. There's always tough cuts in the NFL. And when you have a position room as crowded as the Raiders' wide receiver room and perhaps the defensive back room with some young talent and some veterans there, you have to make tough choices. But I know they love Trey Tucker, and I'll talk about him in a second. But I think DeAndre Carter, from a kick game perspective, having a wide receiver too who has that experience, he might be further down on the depth chart as far as being a wideout. But man, I was just impressed with what he's done what he did in the game against the Rams. And I'm wondering, and I don't know if he's going to make your list, but I think that he's one of those guys that's going to make it very hard for the Raiders to cut him.
Yeah, piggybacking off the Silver and Black Blitz episode that I had, he was one of my roster locks. I actually think he's safe to make the roster simply because I explained on that episode that if you're wide receiver 4, 5, 6, you better be able to contribute to special teams, and that's something that we have. Keelan Cole doesn't do that. Philip Dorsett, I think he's on the bubble too, not on special teams, but had a pretty good outing against the Rams. Christian Wilkinson, pretty good outing against the Rams. Cam Sims scored a touchdown that was reviewed. He got his feet in. So there's a lot of competition, but DeAndre Carter has stood out most on special teams, and I think that's his inroads to making a roster spot. So I totally, absolutely agree with you there. The other thing really quick that stuck out to me on the offensive side of the ball, Justin Herron at left tackle. I think it's important to note that simply because I think he has an inroads to a roster spot, not because he played exceptionally well, but because what are the Raiders' other options at left tackle now that Brendan Parker's on IR? You did a Silver and Black Blitz episode on that. There's no competition from him there. He's out for the season. And then Jackson Barton was usually the guy that would play a lot in the preseason, not on the roster right now. So what are their options at left tackle other than Justin Herron? And I know Jermaine Luminor played a little left tackle against the Rams. I saw him, on that side with Thayer Mumford on the right side. But mostly, for the most part, Mumford and Luminor have been right tackle. So I'm looking at it and saying, well, it seems to me that it's Justin Herron or Dalton Wagner. Maybe he flips over to the other side. But he's got most of the snaps there. He's got most of the looks there, and he's been solid. So I would think that he's pretty much safe to be the backup behind Colton Miller.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting, and I agree with you. I think Herron has been a nice surprise and solid. I think he makes the roster too. When you look at Jermaine Luminor, though, you and I were champions of his last year. We saw him improve and what he was able to do. Seeing him there on that left side against the Rams, it's interesting because they're moving him all over the place. And I can't read, Mo, if that's a really good thing for Jermaine Luminor or if that's something to look into and to say, I wonder what they're doing here. And does that mean he's going to start at right tackle and they're just moving him around to give him some room, to your point about depth and understanding? If somebody goes down, you want to be able to put a guy in who understands, has played the position a little bit and a little more familiar with it. What's your read on that situation with Luminor?
I did some digging because I'm putting together my depth chart predictions for Sportsnet. Also, I'm doing it on if you've watched it on a Bleacher Report Live Monday, I talked about a lot of the positions there. But I think it's because the Raiders last year only kept 8 offensive linemen. So that means you got 5 starters and 3 guys as backups, and those 3 guys have to play in multiple positions. I think the Raiders are preparing for, okay, what if Colton Miller goes down? What are we going to do? And I think the solution could be either Justin Herron, or you could move Jermaine Luminor to left tackle and insert Thayer Mumford at right tackle. So it's all about knowing who your best 5 offensive linemen are if there are injuries. And I think they're just trying guys out to make sure, like, okay, if we have a hole here, we can shift this around. This guy could play 2-3 positions. And I think it's just preparation for the regular season.
Yeah. By the way, you mentioned Mumford played really well too. I continue to see his development week by week. You can visibly see it each time. So that's exciting for the Raiders. A couple other names I wanted to mention to you, Mo. I mentioned on offense, Michael Mayer. Michael Mayer, early in the game, I was highly critical of him because I thought he got blown up a couple times, including, I believe, on one sack where he sort of came off a block way too early. But he then recovered. You look at the rest of the game, what I'm impressed with here is the fact that he's getting open on routes that he's running out of the backfield. And then really from the second quarter on, the time that he saw, his blocking got much better. He really did a great job of doing what he was assigned to do, protecting the quarterback, or on run plays doing what he was supposed to do. And to me, I like Michael Mayer, not just because he went to Notre Dame, and I think the expectations people have to have need to be in line with what I believe will happen. And that is, I think Michael Mayer is the future tight end 1 for this team. I think he's got to work his way into that position. Austin Hooper had a nice little game when he did play. And he's obviously a former Pro Bowler, a really experienced guy, and that's valuable for this team. So I think Michael Mayer, when you're talking about maybe week 5 or 6, working more into that, if he's worked hard, he's doing what he's supposed to do, he'll see more playing time. But I think the expectation around him should be that. But I was impressed with how he picked up after a rough start.
Yeah, Pro Football Focus seems to agree with you with his blocking. They didn't really give him a good grade in the blocking department. So, but we all know why he was brought there, is to catch the football. Now, of course,
Right.
he has to be a well-rounded tight end. They're expecting him to be a well-rounded tight end because he has the tools to be that. But if he has trouble with blocking, it's not the worst thing in the world for a rookie coming into the league. You have to adjust to the pro level in that department. It's harder, I think, to adjust to the blocking schemes in the pros than it is to run routes to catch the football. Because if you're a natural pass catcher, that's going to come pretty quickly for you, and that did for him, or would have for him, if he had some more targets from Brian Hoyer. But I think Michael Mayer, as you said, is going to come along. He's going to be the starter probably before Thanksgiving. He'll be getting most of the snaps at tight end, and he'll be, I wouldn't say he'll be an elite blocker, but he'll be capable and equipped to handle that situation, blocking schemes at his position as an inline tight end.
Right.
But
go ahead.
Fans are going to say he should be a starter. Tyree Wilson should be a starter. And as you said, you have to adjust your expectations coming in. I don't think any of these rookies outside of maybe Jacorian Bennett are going to start week 1. Of course, we noted off air that Jacorian Bennett is banged up, and that's why you didn't see him in that Rams game. So even he may not start right away.
Right. And that's not a negative. I have to reiterate that people around the league, they see a rookie who starts immediately. And believe me, there are some guys who can do it and they blow things up right away, and good for them. But if you look around the league, rookies who come in at key positions, especially key skill positions like that, who start right away, usually are on really bad teams, to be honest with you, because they don't have anything else behind them, right? So they get them out. They don't have an Austin Hooper. They don't have some of these guys. So just keep that in mind, but I think that's good. The other player I want to get to before we talk a little about Aidan O'Connell, before we end the segment, is Trey Tucker. Trey Tucker, 66 yards receiving in the game. The nice 40-yard pass from Aidan O'Connell, kind of threading the needle down the middle, and Tucker adjusting his body to get the catch. Again, starts off rough. Trey Tucker started off rough. I've been one to say that I'm just a little skeptical about him coming in since I watched him play here at the University of Cincinnati. But I looked at the first half last week, and I look at the second half. He had the dropsies again in the first half. Second half, he came out and I think really elevated himself. I don't know if it was self-realization, if it was the coaching at halftime, whatever it was, but he seemed to pick up the pace. And again, I think this is the kind of guy, I know Raider fans are very excited about it, because anytime you have a Raider wide receiver that has speed, people get really excited. Okay. And that's fine. But again, I look at him and I say, this is a guy who is going to be a developmental player. He is not meant to come in and get a ton of snaps in year 1. He may, if he just goes through the roof and develops very quickly, great. But that's not what the expectation be. With Trey Tucker, Mo, I think it's going to be an evolution. He's got to be able to do what he had. He will have opportunities in 2023, I believe. But I just think, though, that you have to balance that out. But I was glad to see that after early struggles and after some of the struggles against the 49ers, he came out in that second half and looked much better, held on to the ball, and that was a good step for him.
For Trey Tucker, it's all about consistency. I think for now, you're going to have to deal with the good and the bad with him. They're going to have to deal with the drops, but he's going to have some big catches, as we saw against the Rams. So his first half wasn't good, let's be honest. 2 drops, I believe. Then he had a 40-yard catch when Aidan O'Connell came in the game. So, it's a mixed bag.
Yes.
I tried to kind of calm the pitchfork mob on Twitter X, because there are people already ready to call him, oh, he's Darius Hayward Bay. Speed, no. All speed, no hands. And I say, first of all, Bay was a top draft pick. So right. They're not expecting Tucker to be that guy coming out of Cincinnati. As you said, there's a lot of competition at the slot position. Jacoby Myers is going to see snaps in the slot. Hunter Renfrow, assuming they keep him, going to see a lot of snaps in the slot. DeAndre Carter is going to see a lot of snaps in the slot. So he's not expected to be a starter and a big contributor right away. they have time to allow him to develop, and that's what he's going to do at that position. So the speed is there. You just want to see the more consistency with his hands.
Absolutely. And so that's where he's at. So, you know, that's fine. The last thing I want to touch on with the few minutes we have left here in this first segment, Mo, is the Aidan O'Connell story. We talked about it in the postgame show of the three of us, me, you, and Murph, that this is the story for the Raiders. What's interesting as it started to pick up now on Monday and into today, clearly that's true. People are covering Aidan O'Connell. We've seen some high praise. We saw Baldy do one of his breakdowns on some of his throws. But like everything else in 2023, everything has to be an extreme. So you have a lot of folks out there saying, hey, why do they need Jimmy Garoppolo? Does Jimmy Garoppolo get cut before the season starts? People. And we've been very complimentary, and we'll talk about even the T-shirt we have now for Aidan O'Connell. We'll talk about that in the last segment. But nonetheless, we've been complimentary Aidan O'Connell. It's a great, great story. Anybody who tells stories for a living, like the two of us and some folks out there who do content, it's a great story. Aidan O'Connell is a great story, but he is not going to be the starting quarterback of the Las Vegas Raiders right now, okay? So let's just slow our roll there. Then there's the other side. It's like people are like, he's playing against second and third stringers. It doesn't mean anything. Well, you know what? Bryce Young plays against second and third stringers. C.J. Stroud plays it. I mean, Mo, you said this a couple shows ago. It doesn't matter. If he was a first-round draft pick, if he was Will Levis in the second round, if he was any of the guys I mentioned, and he was lighting up teams like Aidan O'Connell is, people are like, oh, see, we should have traded up to go get him. So, again, I think the hype machine is there. We get that. But Aidan O'Connell, you and I have been very consistent about this, Mo, for the last week. And especially from Saturday. He won the second string job. There's no question. And that's what he is. He's a second string quarterback at this time with some really high upside that we see so far in 2-game sample of maybe developing into something more in the future. That's it. So it is hype, yes, but don't read too much into it. What do you make of kind of how people are tossing around the Aidan O'Connell story?
So I was on Twitter X trolling. I think it was, I forgot who put it out, but someone from PFF said, is Aidan O'Connell the best quarterback in the AFC West? And then I quote tweeted and I said, Patrick Mahomes, count your days. And then people, that tweet, by the way, went crazy. Got a bunch of responses. People were like, some people don't pick up sarcasm very well, apparently. But I was just trolling. But you're right. We have to keep everything in perspective. He's there to be the fill-in starter for Jimmy Garoppolo. If Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt, it's not a situation where they're going to just cut Jimmy Garoppolo and start Aidan O'Connell. I saw people comparing this quarterback dynamic to Derek Carr and Matt Schaub, and the difference is Derek Carr was drafted as a second-round pick, and Matt Schaub was on the back end of his career as a starter. So Jimmy Garoppolo kind of still back end of his prime, not that old. He's not in his mid to late 30s yet. So I don't. It's not a situation where it was okay. We're bringing Aidan O'Connell. We'll have an open quarterback competition. It was a situation where we need a fill-in starter because we understand or know Jimmy Garoppolo's injury history. But there's one thing I want to say about the comparison for the people who say it's just against backups. I want to blow up that idea really quick, because when we evaluate college prospects, do we say, oh, a guy coming from a D2 or a D3 school, oh, it's just D2, D3 competition? It doesn't matter. It's not as good as playing against Alabama or any SEC schools. Talent is talent. You can see it whether the player is going against backups, third stringers, D2, D3 college players. We don't discount players just because they come from lesser schools. Sometimes that becomes a question is, how do they adjust from going from a D3 school to the pro level? And we see a lot of guys in the NFL from D2, D3 schools who excel. So you have to look beyond who they're playing against, and you have to isolate the player and saying, how are they playing? With Aidan O'Connell, how is he throwing the ball? Is he making quick decisions? How is he getting the ball to his wide receivers or his pass catchers? You can't get caught up on the competition. Focus on the player and what he's doing on the field.
Yeah, and then the other criticism too, it's not even a criticism. It's a point folks are making when they're talking about the success that Aidan O'Connell has had so far, Mo, is this idea he's facing vanilla defenses. He's not seeing schemes that are going to really cause him. But if you look at the breakdowns, and I point you to Baldy's, I point you to Ted Nguyen over at the Athletics breakdowns of Aidan O'Connell. and you'll see that it doesn't matter if they're you still have to make decisions, okay? Sure, maybe they're not throwing the kitchen sink at the kid yet. And again, he may not face that this year unless he starts in an emergency situation, meaning Garoppolo goes down. But either way, I think people dismiss from a lack of understanding that even when you're facing quote unquote vanilla defenses, the quarterback has to make split-second decisions. And on the touchdown you saw in the back of the end zone from Aidan O'Connell against the Rams, and the breakdown that Ted did on that, I invite all of you to watch that. You can see how quickly he adjusted. It was an out route. It was a fade pattern. He comes back inside in a split second, recognizes what's happening, and gets the ball inside, which results in a nice toe tap touchdown. So I don't care if it's vanilla or not. You're still looking at decision making. You agree with me on that?
Scott, correct me if I'm wrong. Hasn't Brian Hoyer been in the league for about 15 years?
Yes, sir.
How did he look against vanilla defenses?
Exactly.
Oh, that's right. He threw a pick six.
Oh, but he sucks.
How did Brian Hoyer? Brian Hoyer knows the system, has seen it all, and he's still struggling against vanilla defenses in the preseason.
He started for 7 teams in the NFL.
So you cannot tell me that it doesn't mean anything. At least it means to me that Aidan O'Connell is a better backup than Brian Hoyer at this point in his career. Aidan O'Connell, 2 preseason games, looks good against vanilla defenses and second and third stringers. Brian Hoyer, been in the league for 15 years, still throwing pick sixes over the middle to the linebacker on the hook. So you can't tell me throw it out means nothing, because this guy, obviously Brian Hoyer has seen a lot more than Aidan O'Connell, yet Aidan O'Connell is dealing the football and moving the offense, and Brian Hoyer struggled to do that on Saturday night. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, and that's why, look, again, nobody's giving the guy a gold jacket. Okay, no. Aidan O'Connell. But he's off to a good start. If it continues and you see this development, the Raiders could have a gem. He could develop into something more later. He could be a career backup in his career. We don't know yet, but it is exciting. There's nothing wrong with being excited about it. And all of the other Raider quarterbacks that were young quarterbacks that failed don't matter. We saw people tweeting out, well, look at this. Here's a list of 7 quarterbacks people got excited about with the Raiders, and they ended up being nothing. The past has nothing to do with it. Al Davis isn't drafting these guys. It's not the same general manager. It's not the same organization, even though people want to assign that to that. But proof is in the pudding. So if Aidan O'Connell wants to prove people wrong, for those who are doubting him, he'll have to do that over the next couple of years. So we'll see. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about coaching. Yes, defense, offense. What have we seen so far in the preseason and in camp that either gives us pause or gives us hope that maybe the Raiders coaching staff learned from last year and will be much better than it was? You're with Mo and Scott. This is Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey original podcast. We're coming back right after these words. Segment number 2 here on Silver and Black Today on this Tuesday. We hope your week is off to a great start, and we certainly appreciate you making us part of that week. Don't forget, we are an Odyssey original sports podcast that you can get anywhere you get your audio. So please do us a favor, subscribe, put on the auto download so Mo and I can eat and feed our families as well. So that would be fantastic. We appreciate that. Again, my name is Scott Branson. I'm your host, along with my co-host and partner here. He is Mo Moton. He is the senior NFL writer over at Bleacher Report, also the Raiders columnist at sportsnot.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Mo Moton, Moemoton. I am at LV Gully. You can also catch my work up on sportsnot.com, as well as contributions, where this week we talked about Trey Tucker. Mo, I'm following him all year for the Raider Ramble. So each week I will be giving a report on Trey Tucker, a little project that Mario over at the Ramble did. So it's kind of fun being able to key in on one player. So you can catch my stuff over there as well. Say hello to all the people on YouTube. Hello, people on YouTube. Thanks for being with us here on the show. Okay, Mo, we talked about players last segment. We talked about Aidan O'Connell again, the story, all that jazz. But let's talk about what we're seeing from a coaching perspective. We were very, very critical, as I think, and fair in our criticism with Josh McDaniels last year. When you blow that many leads, you have record-breaking leads blown to lose games, up by 17 points. We can go through that whole thing. We'll spare everybody out there the details because they know it already. But Josh McDaniels left a lot on the table, and maybe, just maybe, 3 or 4 wins for this Raiders team last year. So a 6-win season could have maybe been a 9 or 10-win season if things go a different way. When you look at what you've seen so far, and I know they're not showing us everything because it is preseason, but when you look at how this team has executed, when you look at the play calling, when you look at the way this team is running his offense, what's your takeaways thus far in this preseason from Josh McDaniels and his performance calling this offense?
Far from the offensive perspective, I haven't seen really much other than the difference between now and last year this time was I think they're focusing more in on Zamir White. I think they're preparing Zamir White, to have a bigger role. So I think Josh McDaniels last year saw Josh Jacobs run wild, and that was great for Josh Jacobs. But I think he's going to revert back to what we thought he was going to run with the ground attack, and that's multiple running backs. Now, there was a report Vinny Bonsignore had out Sunday night that said the Raiders do expect Josh Jacobs to be back, which we've said on this show multiple times. But even with Josh Jacobs back, I expect Zamir White to get 8 to 10 carries per game because last year he's pretty much non-existent. And I think the Raiders understand, look, we don't know what Josh Jacobs' future is going to be going forward. We have a contract dispute with him right now. We have to get Zamir White ready or at least see if he can handle more carries out of the backfield, or else we're going to have to draft a running back in 2024.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like I said, you don't know, you don't see a ton in the preseason, but what I have seen, and this is remarkable, and I know we had a lot of comments from our listeners and viewers from some of the comments Murph made on Sunday morning, Saturday night after the game, which was, he said, and I believe him and agree with him, that it just looks like everyone running the offense, again, the base level offense, just seems more comfortable. Last year, there was a lot of discomfort with Derek Carr in that offense. There was a lot of discomfort with other players in that offense. The offensive line obviously struggled early last year, then got it together. Most of those guys are back, and they seem more comfortable too. But I think there's something there. For whatever reason, it's all about having the right people in the right positions at the right time. And again, this is not criticisms of those players who've left or were traded away, but they never seem to feel comfortable. That's the one thing I will say. And to your point about kind of focusing on Zamir White because they have to prepare for the inevitability of Josh Jacobs not being there if that happens. Like you said, I think it won't happen, but nonetheless, you have to be. But other than that, a lot of people describe it as I feel a different vibe. I just see these players in this offense this time, Mo, and they just seem to be where they're supposed to be. They seem to not be confused by things. The quarterbacks, not just the one, the quarterbacks overall seem to be running in that system well enough too. There's not a lot of confusion. There's not a lot of bad miscues on offense. We haven't seen a lot of those. We've seen a couple turnovers here and there, but overall, it's been very clean.
Well, Raider fans have railed against this offseason, but that's the benefits of having guys who know the Patriot system or know the system in a sense, or our culture or scheme fit. So people didn't like the whole scheme fit thing. They rather go for the better overall player, and I understand that. But when you have guys that know the system and the scheme on both sides of the ball, you should get cleaner execution and more consistency out of those players. The other thing is just it's a natural progression of being in year 2 of a system for the players who were holdovers from last year and didn't get traded or released. Now this is year 2 in the system. We heard Divine Diablo say last year he was a new kid on the block. Second year time around in the same system, he understands what's expected of him, and he's comfortable. And I think that goes for players on both sides of the ball, not just Divine Diablo.
Right. And they also, Josh McDaniels made some coaching changes too to position player coaches, as did Patrick Graham. And that's the thing too. I talked about it on the post-game show, was the idea that on defense, again, still needs some more talent on the defensive side of the ball. We started the show talking about that actually. But nonetheless, these guys seem to understand what they're supposed to be doing. And you're going to have failure. No team is perfect. You're going to have blown coverages. You're going to have go up against receivers that are going to beat your cornerbacks no matter who it is. But at the same time, this Patrick Graham unit too, I've been really just really impressed with how from the outside now, how it appears how well they've been coached thus far, especially in this type of preseason and training camp where there's a lot of new pieces and new kids are in there. The young players have played very well. The veterans have caught on, And I just think it goes to also Patrick Graham getting that leadership. So a guy like Marcus Peters, what he means to this team is far beyond the stat book.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And they're saying the same thing about Marcus Epps. I believe Nate Hobbs called Marcus Epps a field general. I was kind of surprised at that because Marcus Epps is a one-year starter from the Eagles. He was a special teamer for a few years before he became a full-time starter last year. So for Marcus Epps to have that field knowledge and that field awareness is an eye-opener for me. So we'll see how if that translates in the regular season. I'll have my eye on him because I wasn't thrilled I wasn't moved by the Marcus Epps signing. I'll be honest with you. It didn't move the needle for me. But maybe they saw something in him or they're going to use him differently than he was used with the Eagles because he did struggle in some coverage situations in Philadelphia. So I want to see how he cleans that up this year with the Raiders. But as far as the defense is concerned too, I think this goes back to my conversation about the linebacker core. And you're right. The Raiders, the linebacker core still, I think, needs another body. Still needs another top tier, not a top tier guy, but another veteran who can step in and get guys ready. Right. Because what if Von Diablo has a slow start or what if he gets hurt? You're going to need someone other than Robert Spillane there in the linebacking core. But what I like to see is that the linebackers seem to be doing their jobs. And not only that, Curtis Bolton's progression, I think that you contribute that to coaching. As Antonio Pierce said, that he thinks Curtis Bolton can do a variety of things for that defense, not just be a special team or a guy who gets a few snaps here and there. Playing more off-ball linebacker this year, playing to his strengths, being a communicator, I think that part of that is that thanks to the coaching staff getting their linebackers ready and developing players who are on the back end of the roster last year who could be contributors this year.
Absolutely. And I think you're right. I see folks who talk to us, right? I see a lot of them starting to soften a little bit on the Josh McDaniels thing. Now, you brought up a great point, Mo. Until we get to the regular season, this is where I'll agree. In a preseason, it's hard to gauge at all where the coaching is because you're talking about scheming against an opponent, right? And in the preseason, that doesn't really exist because, yeah, you're playing against a bunch of guys who won't even be around when the regular 53-man roster is finished. So until you get to week one, it's hard to gauge, especially with some of the issues we saw last year, which were around game management, okay? Game management, clock management, all those things we have not had to see, or we can't gauge, I should say, in the preseason. So the jury's going to be out on that until we get into real football in week one.
You know what I want to see, Scott? I want to see the Raiders up by 10 in the third quarter, and I want to see them keep that lead. Right. Yes. That's the real test right there. Yep. When the Raiders get a lead, are they able to keep it in the second half? Because if they fall apart again within the first two games with the big lead, people are going to say, here we go again, me included. So I'm still skeptical because I understand this is just a preseason, so they're not playing to necessarily win football games.
Right.
But the real test is, how do the Raiders respond when the bullets are really flying and the games do count in the standings? Are they able to hold leads? Are they able to pick up those leads early in games and start fast? Because remember, the first 10 to 15 plays of game are things that are schemed up. You're scheming for your opponent's weaknesses and strengths, and then you're hoping that it works so that you can build or get a lead and then hold on to it. That's the real test for the Raiders and Josh McDaniels.
Well said. And you know what? Listen, you talk about tests. The first 2 weeks on the road, you're going to know real quick where this unit's at, right? And to me, that's it's either going to make you feel really, really good about where this team is, or you're going to be like, okay, what happened? Because it's a tough one. It's a tough one. And then coming home again in a division game is not easy either. So I think that we'll find out pretty quickly where the team is at. But I do think one of the things that benefits this team, besides its youth, right? Because I think they've gotten younger, which is good. You have to develop young talent to compete in the NFL today. When you look at this situation, though, Mo, the fact that pretty much the whole country has written off the Raiders as being number 4 in the division is really good for them. It takes some of the pressure off, not only the coaching staff, but the players too. And so I think the Raiders have an opportunity. You and I both selected them to win 7 games going back to when we were in the summertime and after the draft. They could win 10. I mean, it could happen. I'm not saying it's going to. I'm saying it could. So I think we're going to know a lot, and we're going to have to see a bunch of guys come through. They're going to have to get performance, not only from Jimmy Garoppolo, but also some of these rookies we're talking about. and their defense is going to have to hold up and play well. They don't have to be, again, a top 10 defense, but they're going to have to be vastly improved over what they've been in order for this team to keep it in, and the coaching's going to have to be better. So I think if you're a Raiders fan, again, I advise you, don't get too high, don't get too low. Stay where you're at. Find the encouragement. There's encouraging things happening, but at the same time, don't start saving for Super Bowl tickets just yet.
What I'll say is that you want to see positive coming into the regular season. You want to see the team build some momentum. So I think you take it for what it is. It is the preseason, but they are stringing together good practices and good preseason games and outings for players that on the back end of the roster. We saw the first team offense look crisp with Jimmy Garoppolo in the game. We didn't talk too much about that, but I thought that was encouraging because Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't seen the field since early December, late November. So I think it was important for him to get out in the field and shake off that rust, even if it was for just one drive. He looked pretty sharp because we read the reports coming out of training camp, and he's had an up and down training camp. People talked a lot about, he's throwing interceptions. We talked about his rhythm being off at training camp before the preseason game started. So for him to go out there against a live defense, albeit second and third stringers, but there were some starters. There were a few starters out there as well. No Aaron Donald, of course, but the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo can go out there and just find his rhythm, find his timing, I think was also very important for him.
No, but remember, Jimmy Garoppolo and actually all the Raider quarterbacks, they went ones versus ones in practice against the Rams last week. Right? People forget about that, and the media has to be far away, and so the media reports on it and tells us what's going on the scene. But they did see some of that time too, so we don't get to see it, but at the same time, very valuable experience for those guys. Mo, you did mention just a second ago too some of the things happening around the league that I wanted to bring up too, and that was this idea of starters playing in the preseason. We've gone so far away from that in the last couple years. The idea of a starting player going out and playing in the second game of the preseason kind of went away. Now we're starting to see slowly, he only played one series. We're starting to see slowly coaches and players in the NFL realize that, hey, you know what? We do need a little bit. I don't need to go play full games or even full quarters. But what I do need is I need a taste. I need a taste of live action before I get to week one. You think this is going to increase into more playing time maybe in the coming years as we start to see these guys see better results early on?
I think also it's the adjustment to a 3-game preseason schedule from a 4-game preseason schedule. So 4 games to me was a lot. I mean, you saw backups in the first maybe 2 games, and then you saw the starters, what they call a dress rehearsal regular season game in week 3, and then week 4 was just guys fighting for the last 3 to 4 roster spots. I think with the condensed schedule, albeit it's just dropping 1 game, I think coaches want to see starters in there for at least that week 2. I think the week 2 preseason is becoming that game where I wouldn't call it a dress rehearsal, but you're going to see more and more starters play in that week 2 preseason game. And then you'll get the guys fighting for the back end roster, the last roster spots in the last preseason game. But to your point, I think you want to get your starters out there. 1, to shake off rust if they've been hurt, Jimmy Garoppolo. 2, if let's say they haven't looked good maybe in practices, because I know Josh McDaniels has implemented this strategy where guys who played a lot in training camp practices didn't see a lot of time in the preseason. So we don't see who gets out of the snaps at practice. So it also depends on how a player looks in those joint practices, because if he's not sharp, then the coach may want to get an extended look at him in a preseason game just to get his rhythm going.
Absolutely. Be interesting to see where it goes, but it's good. I remember back, you're right, when there was 4 games, and especially you would get to that 4th game, you'd have guys trying to make the roster, but I remember starters playing 1, even 2 quarters of those games to just really get ready. So it's amazing how far things have gone the other way. But everything's cyclical. Everything tends to come back a little. I don't think it'll ever go back to that, to your point about the 3 games versus 4. But it's nice to see that too, and just to see these guys get off, because we've seen quarterbacks and teams get off to slow starts, and the Raiders cannot afford, with their schedule this year, cannot afford a slow start, especially in the AFC West. So we'll see how that all goes.
Look, they're getting the Buffalo Bills early this year, I believe, week 2. So you got to be firing all cylinders if you're going to go against the Bills on the road.
on the road. Luckily, they have no snow. It's not going to be freezing. So they're lucky in that case, but it's still a great team they're going to have to go against. All right, we're going to take our final break here on Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Original Podcast. When we come back, we're going to have a little bit of fun. We're going to talk about how my partner Mo has now been immortalized. Yes, it's crazy. It's happened. Talk about that and what we're doing to help out some great causes as well. And we'll close out with some other football thoughts too. But we're going to have a little fun on this Tuesday. By the way, when we get to the next show on Thursday, full show, we're going to have a special guest, which we'll tell you about soon. But number 2, we're also going to talk about any roster moves as we pop up and get you up to date on Raiders injuries and all that jazz. So make sure you subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already done so. Okay, taking that break, when we come back, we're going to get to why Mo is such a big deal here on Silver and Black today. That's the Original Podcast. Don't go anywhere. Back here, the home stretch, Silver and Black today, the Tuesday edition. Thank you for joining us. We are here with celebrities. Yes, we are here with people who are a pretty damn big deal, especially if your name is Mo Moton. He is the senior NFL writer at Bleacher Report and my partner. He is a great and humble guy, but we're going to have fun with this on this segment here on Silver and Black today. I'm Scott Branson, by the way. Thanks for being back. Okay, so one of the things that Mo and I, from a deep personal level, really love to do, and that is help other people, right? So whether it's Mo helping journalism students getting out of school and giving them advice how to get in, because he's had an incredible journey, I should say, from where he started to where he is now, to helping others like I've done, getting on shows, creating content, whatever it is. But we also believe strongly in giving back. And one of the things that we've been very excited to be a part of and to help at least promote has been our good friend Murph, Michelle, and Swag Jeff over at Raiders Fan Radio and their One Nation Foundation, which delivers great donations to the Bolitnikoff Foundation, really Raider Nation-centric charities that help people in need. And so we've been very excited about that, right? And so that piece of it, we're trying to grow. We got some really big things on the horizon to help the folks over at One Nation Foundation. And we started thanks to our good friend over at DC4L Custom Tees. If you follow him on Twitter, great Raiders designs, just amazing stuff. And so we got Mo had been talking with him, sent him over. We got connected and we brought to life a couple of things I'm really excited about. Mo, you ready for this? And I'm going to start and we'll show the first one here too. So you need to, if you haven't already gone over to the website, the Irish Cannon. Yes, I'm sticking with it. And again, DC4LCustomTees.com. You can find this. We're also tweeting the link out, but you can get an Irish Cannon t-shirt. Look at this thing, Mo. It's pretty cool, man. I mean,
I like the 4 in the cannon. I like that.
I know. He's done a good job. He's also, I think, working on your Mo and the 4 jersey shirt too. So we'll see where that comes down. But you can see here too, it comes in black. It comes in white. And I think like a heather gray, is that what they call it now?
Heather gray. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, heather gray. So you can see this is pretty cool. But the thing here is not only can you get your Irish Cannon t-shirt, but out of the funds here, out of the proceeds, $4 from each one of these shirts is going to go to the One Nation Foundation, and they deliver it. They've also delivered funds to help fund Raider Dad, with our buddy Josh in Las Vegas, gets kids and families to games. So buying one of these t-shirts, yeah, it's cool. And you're jumping on a trend here with the Irish Cannon, but you also get to help out all those folks. So we're just so proud to be working with DC4L Custom Tees and doing this, and certainly appreciate everything they're doing. Now, that's awesome. So go get your Irish Cannon t-shirt, right? But, again, the immortalization of Midtown Mo has also occurred now. So look at this, folks. If you're watching us, you can see it. If you're not, you can go to the website and see. But look at this, Midtown Mo. Midtown Mo has his own t-shirt.
I've arrived, Scott. I've definitely arrived. There are a couple of people who have already purchased the t-shirt. They've already hit me up and said, I got to get that shirt. And I said, make sure you wear it, take a picture so you can blast it out on social media to let the people know that people actually support me, do exist outside of Twitter.
Right.
So definitely support it. Pick up a Midtown Mo t-shirt. I would greatly appreciate it. We would greatly appreciate it if you did.
I have this dream that you get in your limo to go to Midtown, as you do, and when you get up there, I know it's an MTA limo, but nonetheless, when you get up there, people might not know what MTA is, but anyway, you get up there and you go into the Bleacher Report building, right? And you take the elevator up. I think it's on the second or third floor, wherever it's at. And you get out of the elevator and you walk, and there's all this hustle bustle, right? Because it's Bleacher Report. There's a lot of stuff going on. But everybody's wearing a Midtown Mo shirt.
That would be that would only occur in my dream. But can you imagine? I just go into the building one day and my producer and my sound engineer are wearing Midtown Mo t-shirts. They actually know my nickname because they hear me say it when I do the Bleacher Report lives. They see other people tweet it or say it in the chat, text it in the chat. So shout out to the people who show up to my Bleacher Report lives and put the Midtown Mo nickname in the chat because it's picked up in the building. And I wouldn't be surprised if maybe one or two people pick up a t-shirt. So thanks to you. That's all because of the fans. That's all because of Raider fans pushing the name, and of course Scott for crowning me with that nickname. So thank you, Scott, for putting that in motion for me.
Well, it's awesome, and I love it. I love the for you guys who are listening, you can go to our Twitter handle, and we're tweeting out links to the shirts, obviously, because it's a charity piece here, too. And again, $4 from each Midtown Mo shirt is going to the One Nation Foundation. So if you buy those, you'll be helping out a lot of folks in Raider Nation. But I love this design from the folks over there because not only does it have the shield and the sword, but the M's they're very Midtown. Like they're sophisticated, right? They're very cool. And as much as I know Raider Nation loves to wear black T-shirts, right? I like the heather gray one. I have it on the screen right now. I like the gray one. I like the white one. I can see Mo rolling around because of the melanin in your skin. You have better skin than I do. With the white shirt, with a black hat on or a white hat on, with some nice white new kicks, man. I'm telling you, just strolling down. We got to get video. We got to get B-roll of that.
The funny thing is that it goes along because my last name being Moten, the two M's just go along with my original initials. So it's a very good play on of that as well. So just to have the two M's there and the design, I think also I told them DC4L Custom Tees that I love the design there. Couldn't have thought of a better logo. He's actually designed logos for other people. I've actually sent other people to him. I believe Rock Raider 585, who's a listener of the show and listener of my live streams, he had some type of transportation business he needed a logo for, and DC4L Custom Tees was able to give him a logo, and he was very pleased with it. So if you need a logo, if you need a t-shirt, if you're trying to push anything, DC4LCustomTees.com, on Twitter as well. He is the guy to go to if you want any type of art and design for your merchandise.
It's unbelievable the work he does. And he doesn't just do it for the Raiders. I mean, obviously, he's very, very popular amongst Raider Nation because he does amazing Raiders designs, including these two that we're talking about. But he also does other teams. So if you see other teams, I mean, in football, I know he does a lot of Pittsburgh stuff. And I know Raider fans won't love Pittsburgh stuff. But nonetheless, again, he's just so talented and so creative. And so you got to get over to DC4LCustomTees.com, TEES, by the way, .com, and we'll link up. We'll send out the links there too. If you go through to order, and I do recommend you order one of the Irish Cannon, one of the Mo Moten, the Midtown Mo shirts, because again, that's $8 you're sending right to charity. So we appreciate that too. But just amazing work, and we're going to do more work with him. We're going to give away some of these shirts in the future, and yes, we will at Silver and Black today. We will buy these shirts so that the $4 still goes through to the charity, and then we'll give them away on the air as well. So make sure you check them out. And again, thanks to them and over there, and again, thanks to Mo Moten for being Mo Moten, so that we can have Midtown Mo.
So this is really quick though, Scott. So this is not all about pushing our narratives, the Irish Cannon, or stroking my ego at all. This is really about charity, as you said. Proceeds, some of the proceeds going to connected to Raider Fan Radio and what he's doing over there at One Nation Foundation. So this is not all about me. This is not all about Scott. It's all about the Raiders community, even though it would be pretty sweet rolling around with a Midtown Mo t-shirt or an Irish Cannon t-shirt. Just saying.
I can't wait to get mine. You'll see us wearing them on the air. And by the way, and Mo really is absolutely correct about that. We get nothing from this other than the folks there at DC4L Custom Tees are sending us each a T-shirt, one of each, right? And I'm sure we'll end up buying some too for people in our family. Although Mo, your family, you have a big family too, so you got to get them on board. I'm sure they'll be wearing them all over the country. It'll be fun. And then I know we will again have some giveaways there. But again, it's all going to charity. A lot of folks sell their own merch, and I get that. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with making some money off your hard work. But in this case, we're doing this for fun and to help out the One Nation Foundation. So please get on board, order those when you can, and we certainly appreciate it. And by the way, share the link to those with your friends so they know Midtown Mo and they also know the Irish Cannon as well. Yes, we will have a backup quarterback with a T-shirt that is selling really, really well. It's crazy, but hey, that's where we're at, and that's cool. But good times and great reminder there, Mo. All right, man. Well, listen, so we're going to head into the rest of this week. We'll be back with a full show on Thursday. I have a feeling we'll be dropping a Silver and Black Blitz tomorrow on Wednesday, either Mo or I, so pay attention to that. If you subscribe to the podcast, you won't miss any of it. But, Mo, it should be an interesting week. This is when you get down to the nitty-gritty, one of my favorite R&B songs, by the way. When you get down to the nitty-gritty here, we got guys fighting for roster spots. You're going to start to see roster moves. Some dreams will end, some will continue, and we'll have a better sense for that roster. And I know you said this week on sportsnaut.com you're going to have kind of your final projected 53-man roster, correct?
Right. So not only are we going to see guys fight for the final roster spots on the depth chart, but I think you're going to start to hear about guys winning jobs. Could be mistaken about that. Maybe Josh McDaniels holds that close to the vest before week one of the regular season just to not give other teams an edge. But I think you're going to start to see or hear about guys are just basically they've locked up their position. So that right guard position, which I talked about in the Silver and Black Blitz episode, I think Greg Van Roten is going to win that job. We might start to hear he's got the job, right, although it may not be officially announced by the coaching staff. So just look out for announcements like that. And also maybe injuries. A couple of guys are nicked up. So if a guy goes on IR, their season's over. Maybe they hold a guy and maybe put him on IR so that he only misses, I believe it's 4 games for the regular season. So injuries, position battles, going to be a lot of news coming up within the next week about that from the Raiders and other teams across the league.
Yeah, I'm interested to see, too. I mean, Marcus Peters is a starter. I'm pretty sure Nate Hobbs is a starter. We'll see if he's healthy if we go into that final game and it's announced that Jacorian Bennett is the other starter on the other side. So we'll see. I that's what I anticipate happening. If he's healthy, if he's not healthy, then we might see something else. But I'm interested to see what happens there, too. And we haven't talked a lot about safety, Mo. We'll have to talk about safety coming up on Thursday.
Yeah, one thing I just want to mention really quick that we didn't get to, I think if Jacorian Bennett is not ready, let's say he's on the injured list or he's just not ready to start, a combination we could see Marcus Peters on one end, Nate Hobbs on the other end, and Tyler Hall in the slot. I talked about that in the Silver and Black Blitz episode, that Tyler Hall has moved around the secondary. He's played in the slot, but he's also played both safety positions. What that tells me is they're going to use him a lot as that chess piece on the back end where he can fill in gaps, but also be the primary slot guy in case Jacorian Bennett isn't ready and they want to use Nate Hobbs on the boundary.
There you go. See, we got you covered. A lot of stuff's going to be happening this week, so it's going to be a busy week around here. Make sure you stay in touch with us. Subscribe to the podcast up on YouTube, wherever you're watching us. We certainly appreciate that as well. Make sure you check out all Mo's work up on Bleacher Report and sportsnaut.com. You can also catch my writing on sportsnaut.com as well as the Raider Ramble. Mo, we will talk to you on Thursday, my man.
Back on Thursday, hopefully with some updates on the roster, but we'll see.
It will be. Yeah, I'm sure. There's got to be, right? So we'll talk about it. And we'll announce our guest on Thursday here tomorrow. So check us out there. For our producer, Mike Robier, for Mo Moten, I am Skakel Branson. This has been another edition of Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey original podcast covering your Las Vegas Raiders. Take care, everybody.